Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope this meets you well in a state of good health and Iman. Alhamdulillah, it's day 323 of Ramadan, and we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for counting us amongst those who will observe the last 10 days. I pray that we are able to get in as much beneficial actions as possible, and Allah accepts it from us, our fast, our acts of worship, and it grants us all the barakah therein. Ameen. My name is Sekinat Alao, and I'm the founder and creative director at Nisabaah Apparels, a modest fashion workwear brand for purposeful and impact-driven Muslim women. We're based out of Lagos, Nigeria, and we've been operating for about 2 years now. Alhamdulillah. I'll be speaking to you about leveraging the lessons and experiences of our believing mothers and fathers in balancing or in achieving a similitude of balance between our work, business, or career and our deen. And before I start, I pray that Allah blesses me and He blesses you who is listening to this. I pray that it makes it beneficial knowledge for both of us. Nillah. Ameen. So, without much ado, I think we should get right into it. So, Bismillah. So, a few of the major problems or issues I face, and I believe that many other people face, particularly women, career women, business women, Muslims that are mothers, is issues centered around time management, productivity, not spending time with my kids enough, or not spending enough time with my spouse, feeling overwhelmed, not having time to do extra acts of ibadah. And all these issues are in no particular order, but I think these are issues that a lot of us face. I'll give you a bit of background into me and my experiences in terms of my spirituality. So in 2013, 2014, I believe those 2 years were one of my best in terms of my spiritual life. If you could say somebody was on point, I would say so myself. Like, I felt so close to Allah in those 2 years, subhanallah. I felt like I was one of Allah's best friends, really. And what I wouldn't do to bring back those years, but inshallah, I pray that I would get many more fulfilling years in terms of my spirituality, bi'idhnillah, and I pray the same for you, especially if you're struggling with some of the issues I just mentioned prior to this. Now, fast forward to 2015, I just gotten married and everything was going great. I still had the same kind of feeling in terms of my spirituality that I had about 2 years prior. That's my best years, like I said. And everything was okay. I was still able to get in my sunnah fast, my sunnah prayers, my tahajjud, my dhikri. Everything was going well, and I was at peace. I felt great. Fast forward to 2017, I had my son, my first child, and I believe that was where everything kind of dipped. Now, having a baby is a blessing, and it shouldn't cause us discomfort. It shouldn't be a burden. But I think it will be foolhardy or we'll be deceiving ourselves if we say it doesn't kind of shake our world a bit. So I realized that some of the things that I could do before I had my son, I couldn't do them as much anymore. So in terms of like my tahajjud, I couldn't, I was exhausted from taking care of a child every day. During the day, I was exhausted. Even then, even though I wasn't even working, I had not started my business as well. But just the sheer fact that I was tending to a newborn baby was very tiring. And I realized that in the nighttime, all I just wanted to do was sleep, which I couldn't even get as much as I needed because I had a child that was, crying at night and all that. So from there, my acts of worship kind of dwindled. But I realized that when I was able to put in some sort of organization, I kind of got back on track a bit. So I noticed that just winging it for me it gave me anxiety. It made me feel less of a mom. Like it made me feel like I wasn't doing the best that I could. And that is me speaking for me. I noticed that when I wing things a lot, I don't feel like I'm putting the best version of myself out there. So what I did was I started to try to put structure in place. So I got a timetable. I put in what I wanted to do at certain times, what time I was going to feed my child, what time I was, what kind of food I was going to feed him, not just doing everything haphazardly. And it helped me, truthfully. It really, really helped. As Allah would have it, I got pregnant again, I think 10 months after I had my son. And this time, I don't think I have recovered from it even up till now. I'm just gradually getting to the point where I'm trying to put a lot of structures in place. So having 2 kids, and at the same time, I had just started my fashion business. Everybody that knows a fashion business knows that it is extremely stressful and it was not easy at all. So even the little that I was able to still manage to do as a mother of one, everything went out the window. Having 2 kids, mind you, I had a help, and I'll come to that later. The point is, I wasn't handling things well. My life wasn't balanced at all. I started feeling like I was rushing to do everything. I felt like my life was a flurry of activities, and sincerely, I still feel that way, even 3 years down the line. I felt like I started rushing my salah, I started rushing my dhikr. I wasn't given enough time to speak to my Rabb because I was constantly trying to, balance my business, to work on my business, to attend to customers, to attend to my child. What also made it worse for me was I was at home, but I wasn't present. So the key word here is being present. People would, I'll catch up with my friends and they'll be like, oh, you're so lucky. At least you're at home and you're able to, attend to your children. But the thing is, I was at home. I was working from home. I still work from home. But I'm not present. I'm physically there, but I'm not emotionally available for my kids. And this has, compounded. It has made me suffer from mom guilt, right? So that is where I'm coming from, and that's like my current state, although it's much better now because I've put some things in place and I've also realized a few things which I'll be sharing with you. The reality is that our time is finite, And as much as we think that we can do it all or have it all, there's only so much we can do during 24 hours. So, what we need to understand is that we cannot manage time. The only thing we can do is maximize time. And the best way to do that is to have some form of organization in place. Now, as human beings, our primary role on this earth is to worship Allah. Allah reminds us of this in Quran 51 verse 56, where He says, "And I did not create the jinn and mankind except to worship me." So what we do with our time must revolve around this main purpose. Our purpose in life, whatever work we're doing, whatever career, everything must revolve around this one thing, worshiping Allah. And we must also remember that the work that we do is a form of worship. And so the same way that we are trying to, build up our spirituality, we should also give that form of importance to our career or to our work life, because it is a part of worship, and every single thing we do makes up our skill on the day of Qiyam. So we need to take both aspects of our life seriously. Now, I think the first thing I would say that is really, really important is that our source of livelihood has to be one that is legitimate. It has to be one that is not frowned upon by Allah. It's not haram. Basically, it's lawful and it's something that creates impact to the society. That is a way to ensure that we are also feeding our scale of good deeds and feeding our spirituality and trying to make the best of this dunya, right? So that's one of the most important things for you to note. Now, like I said, I was struggling with the feeling of being rushed, the feeling of always being in a rush, and it was affecting my acts of worship. So out of frustration, one day, recently actually, I was speaking to a friend and she finally pushed me to do an activity on how to maximize your time. And the answers, subhanallah, they weren't so surprising to me because there were things that I already was complaining about. So I realized after doing the activity that I was doing so many things. And this brings me back to the issue of me saying I have a help. So I had a help, but I wasn't even maximizing my help. So I found out that I was doing things I could easily have delegated to her. And again, that goes back to planning, right? Teaching her what she needs to know up front, having a routine. At a point, I actually did have a routine, but after a while, I became lax and I stopped following up to see, was she doing what she was supposed to do on certain days at certain times, right? So that was what I meant about discussing about having a help. I had a help, but I wasn't maximizing her services to me. Now, I also found out that I was commuting a lot. I was spending a lot of time commuting, and that took anywhere from 4 to 6 hours of my time. I mean, in the mornings, taking my son to school, this is pre-COVID-19, of course, I could spend anything from 1 hour to 1 hour 30 minutes, or even 2 hours some days, depending on traffic situation. I also spent a lot of time going shopping for fabrics in the market, and sometimes, depending on the situation, I could go as much as twice a week. So I wasn't planning my time properly. So I also spent a lot of time attending to customers via like Instagram, social media, WhatsApp, and some of these conversations took a long while. Some went like over a span of days, and it was really, really distracting. I also found out that although I'm not too engaged on social media, I am on social media mainly because I have a business to run there, and I found out that I get distracted. So little bits of distractions here and there made me like derailed me from what I was doing in chunks of like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, which added up at the end of the day. I also realized that actual work, like cutting and the likes, took up a lot of my time. And what made it worse was I had no boundaries. I didn't have a slated time for work. So I found out that when I woke up, once I said my salat, when I read my Quran, and I dropped my kid in school, immediately I got back. Sometimes I don't even have breakfast before diving into work, and I just walked in long blocks without a break. After the only time I took a break was to say my salah, and immediately I'm back to work. Sometimes I had my lunch while working, which was ridiculous to say the least. Mind you, these are still things that I'm still trying to handle, but the good news is now I know where my time goes, right? The question is, do you know where your time goes? Do you know what you spend your time on? Those little breaks on social media, those little time you spend to chit chat with your friend, those times where you think you're at work, you're working, but you're replying that message, all those little times add up. So now that I know where my time goes, it's actually easier for me to create a routine or a structure around this. But I would like to put a disclaimer to say that having a routine doesn't mean that you wouldn't encounter roadblocks or difficulties along the way, but it just means that you're better able to handle whatever obstructions might come along. And trust me, having a routine is better than just winging it. Seriously, ladies, seriously, guys, it is much, much better. So, with this realization, I've been able to draw up some things that I intend to do. I realized that I am more productive in the mornings. And remember, I said that I spend a lot of time commuting to drop my son in school. So you can imagine by the time I get back home to work, I'm exhausted already due to traffic. So that sets a very bad tone for the rest of the day already. So what I've decided to do now is, once I can afford it, I will probably get someone that can take my kid to school, or I subscribe him to the school bus service. So that's the solution. So I think the idea is, once you know what is causing you strain, once you know what the difficulty is, it's easier to now put up a plan to maneuver it. I'm also going to be employing a method called habit stacking. So one of my current reads is Atomic Habits by James Clear, and I think you should read it if you haven't, or if you haven't come across it. So he talks about habit stacking, and that is like using fitting in new habits that you want to inculcate into your routine. So you see why it's important to have like a routine in the first place. Like I said, your routine isn't cast in stone. It's always good to have a routine but also be flexible to accommodate anything that can happen. So in the case of me spending time with my kids, I've decided that, like I said, I'm at home with them, but I'm not at home. So I've decided that after my Zoom prayers, instead of jumping right back into work, I'm going to take out 30 minutes to interact with my kids. So in that way, I slotted in the act of spending time with my kids in between what I already do, what is already cast in stone that I would do. So that way, it's easier to achieve. So that's what I've started doing, and it's working so far. The thing again is with children, I've noticed that it's not in the amount of time you spend, but it's in the quality of time you spend. So I think that's going to work, and with that, I'll keep building up from that. But I think that's a great start. So, for example, if you're a career mom who isn't at home and is at work, your case could be maybe when I'm going to drop my kids, I'm going to use that time to interact with them. It could also be maybe when I get home, once I say my Maghrib Salah, I'm going to spend time with my kids. So that way is actionable and more realistic. You get the drift. So utilizing our time is dependent on the individual, that is you and I. And we have to ensure that we utilize our time very well. So self care and personal development is something we sometimes overlook. Even Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to practice self care. We also have narrations of one of the mothers of the believers, Salama, and she used to be a big advocate for self-care. She used to practice self-care. We have narrations where she used to dedicate time to making her hair, and where she asked the Prophet ﷺ about the length of a woman's dress or something along that line. So we can see that as a Muslimah or as a Muslim man, practicing self-care is not going out of your way, or it's not something strange. So a way that we practice self-care is, even apart from like the skincare and all that, sleeping well, getting adequate sleep is a way of self-care. We notice that during narrations of how the Prophet spent his time, we have the instruction that after Isha prayers, we should try to minimize interactions and try and sleep on time. So we notice that when we sleep on time, we are better equipped, we're energized to wake up during tahajjud, for tahajjud rather, and it makes it easier for us to perform all those acts of worship that you do in the early hours of the morning. We also notice that when you sleep well, you're energized, your brain is refreshed. So I noticed that over the past 3 years, handling the kids' business and all, I haven't been getting a lot of sleep, and that has affected me drastically. Right. So personal development, that is a journey that every human being should be on every single day. When you know yourself and you're better, you know your values, you know what you can bring to the table, you're better able to navigate your work and your business environment or reality. So we should always strive to know ourselves and always try to, know more about Allah, His books, His messengers, His instructions, His injunctions, and the likes, because that is the only way that we are better able to position ourselves to balance work, business, career, and our deen. Touching on self-care again, self-care boosts your self-esteem and confidence, which improves execution of your task. So when you feel good about yourself, when you're energized, you're pumped, and you're able to check off your to-do list immediately and efficiently. Talking about personal awareness as well, when you know your strengths and your weaknesses, when you know what you value, when you know what your faith tells you not to do, you're better able to stay grounded. So, for example, you're working on a transaction that involves maybe riba. You know that Islam frowns against it. You shouldn't be doing anything interest based. So, you're able to, shove it aside or avoid such situations, regardless of whatever consequences might come your way. If it requires you losing your job or anything, just know that Allah would give you something better. The consciousness that you're more accountable to a higher being rather than mere mortals is a good way to stay grounded in business and to earn barakah. So you should also try to strive for a balance in your career and your deen by employing people that complement your weaknesses. So you don't have to do all the heavy lifting. We find this example in our mother Khadija radiallahu anha, who employed trustworthy, knowledgeable, and hardworking people to do all the heavy work for her, and this allowed her to have more time to do more acts of worship and community service, and this can apply to us as well. So don't try to do everything yourself. And of course, as you grow in your business or in your career, you might have more resources to do this. You also want to gain barakah through your employees, so you need to treat them well and be transparent and fair. So, for example, when I started my business about 2 years ago, I had to employ somebody after a while because I had 2 kids. I couldn't handle it alone. And the government had just increased the minimum wage. I knew that I couldn't afford it comfortably, but I still went ahead to pay that employee that amount and more because I felt that that was what she deserved more. You need to obey the laws of the land. So as a Muslim, as a practicing Muslim, obeying the laws of the land where you live is you need to do it basically. Don't be like, oh, maybe the government doesn't do anything for you or it doesn't work for you, so you don't want to. So you need to obey the laws of the land, except it's obviously contradicts what Islam preaches. So, for example, you need to pay your taxes as at when due. You should also pay your zakat if it's applicable to you. And also a good way to gain barakah through your business is also to give sadaqah from your earnings. So in terms of a business, you can think about it about like CSR. Yeah, so that's a way to try to balance your business and also earn good deeds. Then you need to pay salaries on time. Don't owe your workers or don't delay their payments no matter what. And if you are, you need to explain to your employees. So we know that there's an hadith on not allowing the sweat of your employees dry up before you pay them, because I think there's a punishment attached to it. So doing all these things in the right manner prevents you from accumulating bad deeds. May Allah save us. So in terms of looking at it from the perspective of a career person, so you might be thinking of it about in this way, that you need to execute your work and not just execute it, but execute excellently. So our predecessors were hardworking people who excelled at whatever they put their mind to, whatever they put their hands on. So don't just be that worker that collects salary without actually doing the work. It is greatly frowned upon by Allah. So like I said, you need to be clever about our work and in how we execute our work, how we worship Allah. We can have both, even though one might be more than the other, but like I said, we're just striving towards the balance. It's not 100% certain that you can find balance. So Alhamdulillah, Allah has given us a lot of hacks to make it easier to earn rewards with minimal effort. So for example, we know that sitting down after Fajr till I think till Shuruk is like going to Hajj or Umrah. So just look at that. Subhanallah, look at that reward for something that seems so easy to do. I know it's not easy for like a working person that needs to go out. You might gain your reward by saying, okay, as I'm going to work, I would listen to the Quran. So instead of listening to that music, you can put on your Quran, and it's a way to earn rewards. So I give you another example in the case of Juwaira radiallahu anha, where the Prophet, I think, went to see her at dawn and he found her praying. So he left and he came back at noon and he still found her praying. And he told her off and said that a simple Subhanallah wa bihamdi could suffice instead of her staying and praying from dawn to noon. Imagine that's about 5 to 6 hours, and just simply saying Subhanallah wa bihamdi Subhanallah azim could have sufficed, and we might not have to do even more than 100. So those are really, really easy hacks to gain lots of rewards, and Allah in His infinite mercies has blessed us with it. So we just need to open our eyes, read, gain knowledge, and utilize them. So another example, reciting Surah Ikhlas 3 times is like reading the whole Quran. So please, let's learn all these things. To also earn barakah while working, I'm making a very big conscious effort to say the prayers for different scenarios. I find that it's a way to be conscious about Allah every single time. So when I'm working, saying Subhanallah wa bihamdihi Subhanallah, just saying different dhikr, asking for forgiveness, saying the prayers when I'm going out, when I'm going to the market, when I see good things. Different prayers for different things is a way to also earn barakah while working. So it doesn't have to be anything huge. So this way, you don't stress that you're just working and not having time to worship Allah. Of course, the best case scenario is actually to set out time to do these things, but Allah knows this and He has given us this hack. So it's in these little things, and always remember that it's in the quality of your worship and the consistency, not necessarily the quantity. Another thing we should always remember as well is that actions are judged by intention. So when you make an intention, like when you make a nillah that you want to worship Allah through your work and you give your best, Allah sees it, and I know that He will reward you for it. So we have to do things consistently. So another thing that we should be very mindful of is, as business owners or professionals, we shouldn't wallow in self-pity and guilt when things go wrong. So don't dwell on what ifs or if I've done that or regrets. So instead, learn from them and channel that energy into something positive. We should also have the best attitudes to our customers, and this also applies to career people because you're also serving people. So you need to be amicable and have a strong character. You need to be highly principled. So Khadija radiallahu anha used this to make her business successful, as she was someone who interacted joyously with her people. So once you know your weaknesses, please, as soon as you're able to afford it, employ hardworking, trustworthy, and knowledgeable people that can help you. And this creates more time for you to actually grow the business and perform more acts of worship. You also need to be ready to serve, to be elevated by Allah. when you serve people, you humble yourself, and humility is one of the qualities that is most beloved by Allah. So balancing your career and your deen shouldn't be so daunting when you um, realize all these things and you start implementing them. So it's a gradual process, but the sooner that we are able to start implementing, the better. So the question is, how well do you know and understand your primary goal in life? How well do you know your personal values? How much of self-awareness do you have? So those are the things that should drive your every action, and may Allah make it easy for us all. Amen. Another key thing that we need to do is to say no. So I know this is very hard. Even for me, it is very, very hard, but we need to learn how to say no, especially when we know that we can't give our all to something or a particular task, or if it's actually going to cause us stress. Let's try to put boundaries in place. We also need to be vulnerable. We need to express our fears, our pressure points to trusted people, of course, and we also need to take it to Allah in prayer. So even if there's no advice or immediate action to be given, just being listened to is very therapeutic, and your business or your life, when you're able to unburden, you're able to better navigate. It just makes things clearer. So we need to seek help from family and friends, or even employ people. We have the hadith about Fatima bint Muhammad radiallahu anha, when she went to complain to her dad about being overly stressed and all, and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam told her that reciting Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, and Allahu Akbar 3 times better for her than actually having a mate. So yes, we can do this, but we need to realize that our reality might not be the same. If we can employ someone, then please go ahead. It saves you the stress of being overworked, of burning out and breaking down. And I remember I read somewhere that when Fatima radiallahu anha eventually became more buoyant, she was able to employ people to help her. So this is particularly useful for people that live where there's no family close by, or anybody to really help. So please employ the people when you can afford to. You don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. So realize that more people actually want to help, but when we don't speak out, they are not really sure on how to go about it. So need to know that it's not just about employing people, but we actually need to learn the art of delegating. So we don't need to always micromanage every single thing that our employees do. Sometimes we just need to look away and actually empower them to do the work. This frees up our time, and we're able to perform more acts of ibadah. So I'll be doing this disservice to this topic if I don't talk about the importance of friends, colleagues, and even employers in helping us build a balance. So during my internship here as a pharmacist, I had this pharmacist as a colleague who wore the hijab and was doing really well. So this actually inspired me to want to take on the hijab. So then I was just tying the scarf in the turban style, but seeing her and seeing that wearing the hijab doesn't stop her from doing whatever she wanted to do, it inspired me. And before the end of that year, I actually took on the hijab. This was also fast-tracked due to the fact that I also had friends that were on that same journey with me at the same time. Another example I would give about the importance of colleagues or friends is I remember a friend telling me about how in her office, once it's time for Ozu or Asri, they go to the masjid. And subhanallah, this was only possible because there was a sizable amount of Muslims in that workplace, so they were able to arrange for a musalla, and where after they even say their prayers, they're able to give them share reminders amongst themselves. So you need to be very intentional about your workplaces. When you're choosing your workplaces, ensure that they are not religion biased, and even better still, if you can work in places that are owned by practicing Muslims, it makes it easier because they know where you're coming from and they know where you need to go. So there won't be issues about maybe dressing properly or praying at the right time. So as an employer as well, you need to, it's, if you employ Muslims, it's also says as a way to keep you on your toes. So perhaps you guys get carried away. One of the employers can say, oh, it's time for Salah, it's time for this, and that way you are able to, make sure that your FAD obligations are not put on the wayside. So once you're in an environment where a lot of people are doing good, it's easier for you to stay steadfast and prevent doubts from creeping in. Right, so like I said, you need to be very big on planning and organization. So this saying about some people being able to thrive in disorganization is a fad. Trust me, this is coming from someone that used to be very disorganized. So even if it works, you could actually be doing better. So we see this in the example of when the Prophet was planning the Hijrah. We found out that it took a lot of planning between him, his family, his best friend Abu Bakr Sadiq, and all that. So you need to plan. It doesn't mean that you wouldn't face challenges, but it's easier to work around when there's a plan. Very important that you have a routine because it helps you see where you can, slot in some good habits. Remember, I spoke about habit stacking, and it also helps you to, see where you could take out some bad habits as well. Khadija radiallahu anha ran her business. She was able to the business a success and stay grounded because of her high ethics. So options, then please do by all means. So what I'm trying to say is no matter the environment you find yourself, you need to stay steadfast. And if you need to move somewhere else where you feel like, oh, this country is better for me in terms of avoiding, because people trusted her, they wanted to do business with her, and she used this as a means to, build a successful business. And she not only built a successful business, she used it to a society that was getting corrupt by the day, support her husband and her community. So she ran her business on the basis of her faith and a high personal ethics. Already allowed, and her had a mentor in her father who was known to have a good reputation, who was known to be trustworthy, and growing up, which is kind of like a shame, but alhamdulillah, I think I've been able to rectify that to some certain level. So it's very successful. So he was able to greatly influence how she ran her life and how she built a business. So you should be able to humble yourself to seek knowledge from good people that would instill in us good business ethics and good working ethics. So when you learn, don't just stop there. Share your knowledge that the patient people get the best rewards. Share your time, share your skills, and that's a way to also grow your good deed skill and establish sadaqah jariyah. Times we know that nowadays we have to go out to work to support the family, and that's fine. I mean, we have narrations about women who had to sell goods in the market to support their family, even in the times of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what we need to understand is we must ensure that it doesn't override our primary role of taking care of our home and our kids. Allah in his infinite wisdom gave us this business shouldn't be money driven only, you should rather be impact driven. So be grateful in times of ease and in times of difficulty. So you want to remain steadfast and believe in Allah's words that He is sufficient for us. So you don't want to take advantage of a bad situation and now start doing stuff that are not pleasing to Allah. So, and I want us to remember that functions, because He knows that as a woman, there's certain things that we can give our children that men cannot give them. So we are made up differently. Our emotions, the way we approach things are very different, and Allah has seen that the women are better able to handle the kids than the men in terms of some certain aspects, and that's why He gave us this responsibility. So we do in terms of our business, our source of livelihood. In as much as it's an act of worship, it's also for us. But training our children to be responsible and God-fearing people is a way to seal our way to Jannah, because we know that a responsible, God-fearing child, a pious child that prays for their parents, is Sadaqah Jariyah for the parents when they die. So we need to take it very important. So the question is, important to you? What is your primary role again? So it's chasing that promotion, chasing that coveted job, or money derail you from primary role. Do not let your family unit suffer. So no amount of reward given to you by your employers, by mere mortals like you and I, can match that's given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let's not take it for granted. An easy thing to do, and there are some times that one would tip more than the other, but let's just always be conscious of that. May Allah make it easy for us. So struggle with a lot of things I just spoke about, but it has given you a bit of perspective, and if you already know this, I pray that it's a reminder for you. Let's remember that as humans we are bound to ask, but keep striving for that balance. Use of all these hacks that Allah has given us, and let's use it judiciously. We should also remember that all these things that I have said will be all talk, actually implement them. So I think the question we always need to ask ourselves is, what do we stand to gain? We stand to gain Allah's pleasure. We stand to gain Jannah. What do we stand to lose? If everything wrong, then we are getting closer to Jahannam. So all these things we need to we do not strict attention to. May Allah make it easy for us. I would also like to thank the Fariha Network for giving me this opportunity to impact, and I pray that blesses them and rewards them for this. And I also pray that this counts as a very blessing for all of us on the day of Qiyamah. So on this note, I would like to say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.